I think on this particular situation, they would. And that has to be the ongoing genocide in Palestine. I think that is the one point of contention where Americans will look towards policy as a rhetoric. And for Donald Trump, he's unapologetic with who he sides for, who he wants to support and all that. And of course, if he becomes president, he's going to throw the full weight of US, if he can, bypass the bureaucracy towards Israel. Let's not beat around the bush here. And I think for a lot of Muslim voters, that would be the turn off for him.
Hello Internet, this is Comparative Council, and once again I'm Hafiz and
he's with Adi as usual.
Yep, as usual, also as usual as the KL podcast studio. Now we're not gonna hear talking about the podcast studio here, but rather than something that brewing up. It's been since I think March. There was change of candidates. There's a lot of things. There's a debates actually, and for the VP as well. So what am I talking about today?
If any of you have watched the previous episodes on Kopitiam Council, Hafiz wore a shirt to commemorate the beginning of us covering this whole event. And if you haven't guessed it right now, it is the upcoming US presidential elections.
Correct.
Very exciting times because the world is sort of holding its breath as we come closer to the election date. I think as the time of the recording would be about 2 weeks. So I think once this episode out, one more week until then. So be sure that we're going to be covering this event right now and right after to study some of its implications and provide you, the viewers, some context on what we think the implications of this most historic election year. A lot of things have been happening, and I think a lot of things are contingent and riding upon this particular US presidential election.
On top of that, because this is the last episode before 5th of November, when the Americans go to the polls, we also at the end will be giving our verdicts. Who will win? I know maybe I don't like giving a verdicts, but let's do some predictions at the end of the episode so we can banter one another whoever gets wrong in the future. All right. So Adi, American race between Trump and Kamala. What's your perception now? For 5 months of campaigning?
Okay, I think the most decisive moment has to be Donald Trump working in McDonald's the other day. You can say what you want about this guy, but I think that won a lot of points with the younger crowd or even people who are a bit more on the fence because, this is a president, a multimillionaire businessman, someone with a larger-than-life kind of personality, and there he is trying to relate to the working man working at a McDonald's there. Compared to, let's say, Kamala Harris, who I think has been riding on the whole existential crisis narrative, saying that, if Trump was to win, then America will slip to some form of autocracy or fascism, which is a very, alarmist narrative and talking points, which I never really am particular of because we've seen so much of these divisive kinds of rhetoric, identity politics and all that. And it's just nice to see a refreshing take on a presidential candidate, just having fun, giving fries and Big Macs to regular people just driving from McDonald's.
Sticking out like a sore thumb, isn't it?
I mean, if he doesn't stick out like a sore thumb enough in public, wearing an apron and then just like handing fries, like, oh, hello, how are you, the beautiful family, then that does as well. So, if he doesn't win the elections, then McDonald's might consider a brand ambassador or even a new position for the previous president. So what about you, Hafiz?
Well, you started with Trump, so that's very interesting because not only that, Adi, because what he's trying to do right now is targeting white male voters, not just the senior ones, but the young ones, as you rightly say. So, working for a few minutes in a McDonald's chain. But what's more, I think he goes full on is he appears in several so-called YouTubers, young YouTubers like Paul and also some other YouTubers in America. And what they were discussing about was not politics, Adi. It was, I think there was one episode where Trump was talking about his brother struggle of alcohol addiction. There was no mention about policy. There was no mention about existential crisis. For that matter, it was about his brother struggling to get out of alcohol addiction. And I think this is where he's good at. Like him or not, you have to give credit to the man that he can tap into not some factual statistics, data stuff, but emotion, which is, I think, very important when it comes to election as well. I mean, it's good that we have, some statistics or data to back some of our argument. But what people most, oversight with the most is emotion part. And he went on to all these YouTubers, famous YouTubers, streamers, whatever, and then talk about something very, I think most American can empathize with: alcohol addiction. And I mean, this is a better way, I think, to reach a different market of your voters. I mean, it's most people can talk about, let's say, for tariff policy. I mean, he may know that, he's not popular with that tariff tax policy that he tried to impose on China 60% and other countries for 20%, because all these people want cheaper things. But what the American people also like is someone that can empathize with them, the daily struggle actually that most Americans have. So I think that is a very refreshing approach for American former President Donald Trump. It's sort of like giving me the impression how Prabowo also changes from a very strongman identity to a grandpa with the dancing TikTok, so-called cute kind of trending for to be a president. I think Trump actually learned something from Prabowo and tried to use that to his advantage. So I think that's a very good thing also. Another thing for Trump as well, that you because you highlighted Trump, is that how he now in the mode of just chilling in terms of he goes to everywhere. He appears in, like you mentioned, in McDonald's. He appears in some podcast show. He appears in other YouTube channel that we never heard. Sometimes we never heard of, especially for Malaysians. Maybe American, it's quite popular. Talk show. These are not really a regular routine for president, especially leading up to the last 2 weeks of the campaign. So he has something maybe that he knows. Kamala trying to get from women, non-white voters, and Trump just want to secure that white population votes for him, because he knows for Kamala to win, Kamala has not just to win white votes, but also non-white voters, but also white voters. So I think this is some sort of a good strategy for him. Give it up to the man, yeah.
Yeah, in a way, when it comes to Trump, he really does try to capture that middle America demographic, which I think a lot of people do have a lot of nostalgia for. Like when you think about America at its height, you think about something like in the 90s, which Trump basically thrived on, and he kind of wants to return back to that, even you can say authentic experience that a lot of Americans nowadays, they're feeling the pinch, they feel like their politicians are not being held accountable or that they're floundering. So he wants to appeal to that down-to-earth kind of character. Whereas Kamala, okay, maybe policy-wise, she knows what she's talking about, the statistics she has, and analytics and all that. But when we compare it, just like in Malaysia, a lot of the discourse in Malaysia isn't policy-driven. It's rhetoric-driven, and it also appeals emotionally. There's not some things like when we look at the UK, which is a bit more drier, a bit more technical. I think America has a lot more in common with Malaysia. Well, Malaysia has a lot more in common with US politics as it is, considering how divisive it has become with America. But I think when it comes to comparisons here, if Malaysia wants to make that consideration, it's because we don't talk policy here. I'm just trying to use this as a segue to say, in Malaysia, we like to laugh at America, saying that, oh, they got horrible candidates lined up for president and all that. But then the way that it goes about campaigning isn't too much different from here. We don't talk policies. We don't talk about, let's say, election promises to lower unemployment rate at a very technical level. These things are just not that attractive to the average voter unless you're talking about urban demographics, which are more policy-minded. But for America, America isn't just an urban population. There's a very strong rural population that I think does have a lot in common with the stuff that Donald Trump is echoing, which is more straight to the point, business-minded, getting money back and getting jobs back for Americans. And now you say the appeal is to mostly white voters. I think I want to disagree a bit because when we see some of it's very mixed between both. I think there's no distinct. This is still a strong distinction to say that whites mostly vote for Donald Trump or people of color mostly vote for Kamala Harris. I think there's a lot of overlap between each of them. When we look at a lot of developing countries, the populations in developing countries, a lot of them do have quite a soft spot for Donald Trump. I used to have this guilty pleasure for a lot of travel vloggers, especially from America. They like to go to, let's say, India or even Pakistan or all these developing countries. And then the word Donald Trump is always used to say that, relate back to America. And they have quite a strong and positive opinion of him. I think the only thing that holding back for Donald Trump, but I think this also says in equal measure for Kamala Harris, is and I say also that they don't talk policy, but I think on this particular situation, they would. And that has to be the ongoing genocide in Palestine. I think that is the one point of contention where Americans will look towards policy as a rhetoric. And for Donald Trump, he's unapologetic with who he sides for, who he wants to support and all that. And of course, if he becomes president, he's going to throw the full weight of US, if he can, bypass the bureaucracy towards Israel. Let's not beat around the bush here. And I think for a lot of Muslim voters, that would be the turn off for him. Kamala has been trying to skirt around the issue, trying to not rile up too much about it because she knows that her demographic would turn on her because most people that would vote for Democrats, they're on the more progressive spectrum, and all of them are the ones that tend to go to these rallies for Palestine to protest against Israel. So a very sensitive issue. Trump, he has the freedom to say what he wants because I think he knows who he has already in his pocket. It's just, I think, the fence sitters, if they're not convinced, there's no convincing them now until election day. So I think he has rode on what he already has. And okay, if that's the case, then, like I said, go back to McDonald's if he doesn't win.
Well, I have mentioned in, I think, previous episode when we talk about Kamala and Trump, you can click on this cut right here. I will attach the episode that I meant, is that when Kamala announced her candidacy, she was, I think, 15, 20 points ahead of Trump. And nowadays, looking at right now, actually, Trump is leading about 1 or 2 points. It's still neck and neck, but falling down from 15, 20, it's a calamity for Kamala. And it's not a good momentum as we're approaching the 5th of November. So now that Kamala also, struggling with the issue of Gaza, I think it needs to be understand that the Muslims or the non-white voters that always synonymous with Democrats, I think we'll be having a conundrum of choosing between, do we vote for Trump or we still stick with Democrats? Because Kamala Harris, knowing that this could, addressing the very issue of Gaza could be also divisive for her as well. Because on top, the majority of non-whites might be, leaning towards supporting Palestine, but she knows she's surrounded by lawmakers or the elites who are not pro so much of Palestine. So this is where we see the contrast of Trump is endorsed by Netanyahu and the Israeli administration. There's a few newspaper cuttings that would say Netanyahu supports Trump. This is better compared to Harris. But this is where I think Kamala should also act on it, because just leaving it to subside like this will anger especially the Muslim community, that Kamala just not trying enough to woo all these Muslims or non-white voters. This is a good opportunity for her to do, but also she knows if she does this, this will be an attack point by the Republican as well. So it's I don't know. It's a new scenario for Kamala Harris because this is the first time that she is running for president, while she was the one of the worst at least rating for the vice president of America. And on top of that, Adi, when we talk about Kamala Harris, she is endorsed by huge celebrity, Taylor Swift, come in, and very recently Eminem. I don't know if this is just like a PKR, or I mean PH, trying to woo a section of voters that they already got in their pocket. I mean, it's no surprise Taylor Swift and Eminem, right, would endorse Kamala Harris. I think something radical or someone that not usually aligned with Democrats, if this endorsed for Kamala, I think that would be a game changer. I think you can name any other celebrity who actually already coming from California. It's a no-brainer. It's like asking, someone from Subang Jaya actually endorsed for DAP or PH. Duh. If someone from I don't know Kelantan, I would say like, yeah, PH would be better. Now that's something like you want to know about. So it's still, I think, no X factor for her the last 2 or 3 weeks. But like I said, Trump already go into different realm of politics now. Just sharing he opened up. This is a man that was very close, a very businessman minded, no money, no talks kind of guy. But in one podcast, he opened up, talk about his brother, and it's refreshing. Not just for the young voters, Adi. This is something just for the whole American to see. Like, this is the man that they're voting for. This is a man that has a heart compared to so-called the dry Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I think you can sum it up as just charisma. The fact that we're focusing more about Trump rather than Kamala Harris shows how he is such an attention-grabbing individual. You may like him, you may not like him, but the fact is he gets talked about regardless. And he knows that any kind of attention is good attention. Any press is good press, whether it be positive or negative. So this is someone that I sleep in, I make my bed and I'm going to sleep in him. I don't care what everyone's going to say, but it does reap a lot of dividends for him. What you see is what you get with Trump. With Kamala, it's just, like I said, you said, dry, uncharismatic, uninspiring, if I have to say. And this whole race to trying to defend the image by pushing it more on Trump's deficiencies, it's like a race to the bottom as well, for her. So whereas Trump is always just setting up the bar even further and further, saying more outrageous and more outlandish things that just captures the imagination. That is charisma to me as a presidential candidate. Whether I agree with the approach and whether you may agree or disagree, that is something entirely different. We've already seen the effects of populism with the whole Trump factor. Trump kind of blew open the door for this whole populist rhetoric to spread across Europe and even South America. And we can see some of those elements also creeping up in parts of Southeast Asia as well. These strongman characters just becoming unapologetic and just saying what he wants to say, being honest and just playing into the feelings of the population as a whole. So I think you say I don't like verdicts, and I definitely don't. But I think when it comes to predictions, I think Trump has a good chance to secure the vote this time around. So I'm going to think about, if that was the case, how would that change the global situation? I can only go off on when he was president, which was a foreign policy that tends to focus on de-escalating particular hotspots, like in North Korea, in regards to Iran. He says, of course, like I said, unapologetically, he is going to be supporting Netanyahu. But you never know. He could see that, okay, this is not going to be good business for everybody. Let's just try de-escalate, try get things resolved as quickly as possible. So maybe a foreign policy that's going to be a bit more taking responsibility for a lot of these other hotspots of conflict that's happening across the world. So maybe just a continuation of during his first administration, which the Biden administration kind of followed through and there's nothing radically different. I think it's going to be more or less the same. So when it comes to Malaysia, I think we're still going to be business as usual.
Yeah, I would agree if Kamala Harris become the president of America, it will be business as usual. But I think if Trump become the president, I think at least in economic sense, with the tariff that he mentioned, the China trade war is going to even on steroid. He already mentioned that he will increase the tariff to 60%. Countries like us that wants to be in the frontier of semiconductor and whatnot will immensely benefit from this because we set up shop and we can export all of our chips to America. So they don't have to buy from Taiwan or even from China. So that's a win for us. But I think it depends on industry as well because for cars, we talk about global impact, right? For EV, China is number one exporter now. And if Trump put a tariff 60% on it, there would be a huge shift in the EV market in America to just local domestic product. I would say at this point of time, apart from Tesla, all the American EV brands are subpar to Chinese due to just not just cost, but also manufacturing capability. So in this specific niche industry, we can only see the American people would not benefit from this. They would pay so much, but to get something not equally the value of their paying. Compared to rather than their compatriots in, let's say, in Malaysia or even in other countries, they would pay somewhat better price for the same thing. So on that aspect alone, maybe several countries like for us and I mean in Europe as well can leverage on that. But ultimately, the biggest loser, I think, economically speaking, if Trump is elected, is the American people. Yeah, I don't know how you can reason to balance out this effect of tariff with other people. Yes, maybe if you do this kind of tariff, a lot of job created in the locals to meet the demand. But it also means that local product will rise the price of their product because there's only, monopolize the market already. So it's while it's better to deter China, a very aggressive way of conquering markets, but America also should think about their people because otherwise it's going to be a kind of economic downturn as well in the future. Maybe last remark for you, Adi, about this presidential, and of course, please give your verdict.
Yeah, like I said, I think I'll be Trump this time around.
Okay.
More also of the fact that he just does bring that kind of X factor this time around. And he kind of did last for every election that he participated in. But it's just more so that Kamala isn't able to summon that confidence in me as compared to Trump. Like I said, what you see is what you get. So you can kind of make predictions and you can make contingencies based on something very predictable, right? So Kamala, she's already tiptoeing on a lot of issues. At least Trump, he says what he means, and not necessarily that he would be. When the more extreme measures, he says it as campaign rhetoric. But when it comes to practice, he does take quite a moderate approach. Like let's say the China-America trade war. Very strong rhetoric being thrown around. But at the same time, Trump has proven that wherever they can cooperate, they would. As long as business, like you say, money is on the table, then business, there's that open avenue for cooperation. I don't think Trump is that's much of a nationalist to say that. No. Anything that is foreign, no. I think if it brings some kind of benefit, if he sees some kind of benefit, then he would pursue that. So I think for me, it would be business as usual, regardless. I still think it's just that the confidence for leadership, especially among the American people, would be a bit higher for the voters, especially who do support Trump, would be there, is more cemented. Well, I think with Kamala, there would be already backlash from, let's say, the Trump supporters, but at the same time, ambiguity within her own voter base as well. I mean, the traditional Democrat voters, especially people of a more Muslim disposition, right? They might see that disappointment because of the lack of decisive rhetoric or narrative that she wants to push when it comes to stuff like Palestine and Gaza. Trump, like I said, what you see is what you get.
Well, since you mentioned Trump will be the winner, I'm inclined to say Kamala, but I would not say that because I think Trump will win due to out of 7 swing states, one of them is Michigan and Wisconsin, and these are where Michigan's a lot of Muslims and non-whites voters, and this is where Kamala neglect. I think I would use the word neglect voters, and I think they may not go to the polls to vote for either one. So there would be a loss on Democrats to not actually try to convince these voters. And I think that's it for this.
Wait, one more thing.
Go ahead.
I think just a great indicator to see how well they do is because Trump didn't win the popular vote in the first time he became president, right? So if he was able to secure the popular vote, right, population vote, then I think that says a lot about leadership confidence with him and compared to Kamala.
Yeah, that's it. That's it for this episode, US presidential race. Next up, we're gonna go to another European countries, but somewhat different axis, not the same axis. So what is that? Stay tuned for the next episode.